Let's cross to the Sydney CBD though now and catch up with the Australian's economics editor, Adam Crichton. Thanks for joining us, Adam. You'll be very keen to have a look at this ALP review, won't you? And obviously they're looking at some specific tax measures. Franking credits are already been identified, but you don't need to be a rocket scientist or the best political analyst of the last 100 years to realise it's very seldom that voters will actually vote for a vast array of increased taxation.
Yeah, look, certainly some sensible economists might have sympathy with individual measures that the Labor Party was proposing, but it was just too much, especially from opposition, and certainly we really missed a bullet, I would say. I mean, the accumulation of all those tax proposals, if they were being passed now, would make the economy even weaker than it already is.
This is the point that I think way too many people are missing, Adam, because we've got Labor. Of course, they're going to criticise the government, but they're talking about bringing forward tax cuts now and the like to try and increase growth in the economy, to try and get some wages growth happening in the economy. But the big question is, with the economy being so sluggish at the moment, my God, what would have happened with all that additional taxation coming in under a shortened Labor government, especially taxation on investment?
Well, certainly the growth figures would have been a lot weaker. I mean, we've already had essentially stagnant retail sales since July, so I think consumer confidence would be even lower, and of course house prices probably wouldn't have ticked up by quite as much as they have done in Sydney and Melbourne, which of course for first home buyers isn't great, but nevertheless there is a wealth effect there. It does make households feel a bit more confident about the future. So certainly, you know, that would have been a problem. But look, you know, we have to look forward and we have to ask what the current government's doing to try to stimulate growth. And I do agree with the Labor Party, however self-serving their claim currently is, that the tax cut should be brought forward. I mean, ideally all of them to next year, but even just the second tranche. We're
about to hear more from the government regarding drought assistance. Do you think that that's going to be anything significant enough? Obviously it's going to be aimed at helping drought-affected communities, but that's also a stimulus into the economy, isn't it?
Yeah, look, it is a small stimulus, but the reality is the agriculture sector is quite small. I think share of employment is about 2%. So it's a very small sector. I don't think you're going to see the impact in the aggregate growth figures. That said, of course, the drought assistance may well have merit, but I do always wonder, whenever there's a lot of emotion involved in an area, and it doesn't matter what area of policy it is, the decisions can often not be so good in public policy terms.
Well, there's a lot of political pressure here from all sorts of quarters, including the Nationals, to do something, I suppose. But at least when you're talking about interest-free loans, I mean, it's money that taxpayers get back eventually.
That's true.
And it should help either keep people on the land or keep communities ticking over.
One of the interesting things about the drought assistance is that the interest rate, I think, that the government has proposed is about 3% on these loans, on these concessional loans. But, of course, the government itself borrows for about 1%. So actually it might actually be making a profit out of these so-called concessional loans. And the second point I think that's worth making is that there are already concessional loan schemes, both at state and federal levels. So although I'm not fully across the minutiae of this latest round of assistance, I just think that it's probably superfluous to some extent. I think there's already a lot of assistance there.
Yeah, those interest rates are an interesting one. We've had one of the farmer groups on here complaining about this. I think there's a state scheme at 2.5%, a federal one at 3.5%. So on those numbers, the federal government's actually making money off drought assistance loans. So you'd think you'd give them, at the very least, at cost price. Although we're told the loans that are coming out today will be no repayments and no interest, at least for the first 2 years. Now, Adam, I just want to get to an exclusive story that you've reported in The Australian about red tape. Now, under the Abbott government, back when Tony Abbott was Prime Minister, there was a big focus on red tape. In fact, Josh Frydenberg was given the task before he was Treasurer. They had these days in Parliament that were devoted just to getting rid of superfluous regulation and legislation and get rid of red tape, but it's gone in the other direction subsequently.
Yeah, certainly it seems that the government largely dropped the ball there in about 2015. Josh Frydenberg obviously did a good job. There was actually a 5% drop in the total volume of regulation as measured by the IPA from 2013 to 2014. But since then, there's been a significant surge, and it's at a record high now. So the IPA has basically gone through all of existing legislation at the federal level and also all regulation too, and they've counted up, using artificial intelligence, they've counted up words like must or should, or will not, and so forth. And so they've come to an aggregate of something like 356,000 constraints for the year 2019, and that's up from about 300, I think, back in 2013. So there's been a significant increase, also at the state level too. I mean, a state like Victoria, the same methodology there basically reveals 119,000 constraints. And by the way, Victoria is the most regulated of the states.
Yeah, well, there's a clue there. If governments are looking to do something to increase growth in the economy, get rid of regulation. Exactly. It's just incredible.
Exactly.
Just quickly, Adam, before I let you go, a story that you wrote earlier in the week that I've talked about here and we've had a lot of response to. I bet you've got a lot of hate mail too.
It was the most read story I've written in 7.5 years.
I bet. And this is pointing out that we're paying in the age pension more than $6 billion a year to people whose houses, their family home is worth more than $1 million a year. But no government's ever going to include the family home in the pension assets test, is it?
Well, look, I wish they would. I mean, everyone says the politics is so bad, but I mean, as the article pointed out, there are 255,000 pensioners who are living in homes worth more than $1 million. And although sitting in Sydney, we might say, oh, that's not a lot of money, $1 million. But I mean, across the country, the average dwelling price is about $500,000. So it is a lot of money still to be living on social security, I think. And of course, if they used all those savings, and of course, no one's saying pensioners should be forced to move. They're just saying that the pension payments should come out of their estate when they pass on, that's all. So no one would ever be forced to move under this idea. But of course, the $6 billion that you just mentioned, that could come off income tax, which would have dramatically beneficial effects for the economy. I mean, one economist, John Humphreys, said that you could cut the top marginal rate of tax with that $6 billion from the current 47%, which is crushingly high, to 36%, which would unleash extraordinary economic growth. But you know, we don't do that. We keep paying these penally high rates of income tax so that quite well-off people can stay in their homes and, of course, pass on the value to their children.
There's a lot of economic logic to your argument, Adam, but you're a brave man. Any pensioners, part pensioners watching now, you can email Adam at The Australian. Thanks for joining us, mate.